I've been sitting here for the better part of 2 weeks, fantasizing about what it'd be like to have a three-way with Jennifer Love Hewitt and Shamar Moore. I've also been sitting here for the past 2 weeks attempting to write the intro to this video in that time frame. How do you write the introduction to a video on a character nobody cares about? I cannot seriously think of the last time I saw any meaningful discussion around the Hag, the closest thing being during my interview with Kaito, where he and I came to the consensus that we both relatively enjoy the character, while others don't. The thing is, I really only have Kaito's word that others don't, because I've never heard people talk about her. Like, ever. When I voiced these frustrations to my chat, one chat member suggested I make a grandma joke, which was incredibly unhelpful. That's like me asking, "Hey chat, what do I cook for dinner?" And someone responds with, "Food!" In any case, I'd honestly go out on a limb and say, in my own experience, Hag is the least talked about killer in the game. I've seen more discussions around Artist than I have around Hag, and Artist is so forgotten. When I did a video on ranged characters in the game, I completely forgot about her because she's mentioned so little. Well, if anyone is going to talk about this old bag, I guess it's going to be me, so let's get into everything about the Hag, her lore, themes, power, gameplay, perks, add-ons, and more. Check your screen for time codes now, and remember, this is a largely auditory experience, so feel free to throw this on a second monitor, or a tablet, or whatever, and let's jump right into Lisa Sherwood, otherwise known as the Hag. Good God, I have never seen a worse written lore bit in this entire series up until this point. First off, it's the most confused one. The original few paragraphs sets up a girl from a small village kidnapped by cannibals, which is weird within itself. From everything we know about cannibals, they tend to not be uncultured psychopaths, but whatever. And then in her tome, she appears to live in a small rural town. Okay. It's also very badly written. There's this one bit where the Hag's friend Pam asks her if she's heard about someone who got hit by a car near the school. Lisa says no, and then Pam just drags her to a dead body splattered across the road that for some reason has no emergency personnel or cops or anything, and then for no apparent reason, Pam, the little psychopath, starts laughing at the dead girl who got apparently plastered across the pavement by a car. The whole thing is presented in a very scattered way, and honestly feels like Pam is painted as a fucking sociopath, though you won't feel bad when she dies later. It also has a very weird framing. Whenever Pam is like, "Hey, did you know that some girl got hit by a car outside of the school?" it's talked about as if it happened earlier in the day, or even the day before, or something like that. And then, like I said, she just drags her directly to it with absolutely nothing happening. So either it happened seconds ago, and Pam is talking as if it happened like hours ago, or the writers just didn't know what the fuck they were doing. There's supposed to be this whole theme throughout it of fucking with powers beyond your comprehension and the consequences of doing so, but it's all presented in a very disjointed way that makes the story feel less like a collection of events that weave a narrative and more like a let's see what we can throw at the wall and make it stick. There is a hint in the video entry of the lore at Pam dying due to the entity's influence, as the symbol of the black cult is etched on Pam's hand, but this doesn't get paid off like at all. But the most egregious part of the Hag's lore is the fact that Lisa never does anything. She has no personality. Everything always happens to Lisa, never because of her actions or the things she chooses. And her reactions to every occurrence are nothing more than, "But my grandma said that was bad, don't do that." And it's all so dull. Lisa is devoid of any personality. She's an empty husk that exists in the world, not a character with motivations and drive, just a creature. And this upsets me. The Hag had the potential to be something special, something more foreign than what we've had up until this point in the game's lifespan. Every other killer was an innocent person, twisted by the world around them and how they were treated. Trapper just wanted friends, Wraith wanted family and peace, Billy wanted to be accepted by literally anybody, and Huntress wanted to live in her forest with just herself and perhaps a small child. But what does Lisa want? Your guess is as good as mine. I would have far preferred if she was a shaman type character, even related to the religion of voodoo. As someone from South Louisiana who grew up around practitioners of hoodoo and voodoo, I can tell you that that would have made for a far more compelling story. And we even could have had our first truly evil killer, one who uses the crafts for her own selfish desire to consume human flesh. Instead, we get this piss poor story about her being friends with some psycho bitch who mocks dead people and died in some Looney Tunes cartoon's ass accident with the coffin after some pallbearer tripped over it. Apparently, the coffin was also so heavy because some mildly fat person happened to be in it. All in all, I give the Hag's lore a 0 out of 5. There is nothing redeemable here. It all reeks of being written in a rush by a 12-year-old taking their first stab at any remote form of horror. It's completely disjointed and disconnected from each other. It's got bad framing, bad pacing, and just completely unrealistic scenarios that are done for little more than shock humor. Let's start with the positives. If, and only if, behavior was going for that swamp witch type vibe that I mentioned should have been the case in the lore section, then thematically, everything would fall together in almost perfect harmony. Her perks are a reflection of curses placed upon innocent people, and add-ons are all ingredients for powerful spells and potions, minus the eerie add-ons, which appear to be personal effects of Lisa's. Her personal map and overall look of her model also fit the Swamp Witch aesthetic. The symbols she draws on the ground for her power are simplistic in design, yet invoke the meaning behind her magic quite nicely. Where we start to run into confusion again is things like Grandma's heart, where there is a quote from the Grandma saying, "Bring me another slice of the girl," implying Grandma was also a cannibal and an evil witch. Then where the fuck was that in the lore bits? Menrag is a piece of Lisa's dress from the day she disappeared, but why would that give her additional power to her spells? And finally, the Mori. I love the Mori. Visually, it's one of my favorite Moris in the game. Unfortunately, it contradicts a lot of the ideas that surround the character, the idea being she began the magic as an act of vengeance and some sort of ancestral speak to her. But now she's just a cannibal, apparently. Which doesn't make any sense. She was kidnapped by cannibals, sure, but there's nothing in the lore to state that Lisa is outright a cannibal or anything that would lead to her being a cannibal. This is actually kind of my entire issue with the themes of the Hag in general, is that there's all of these swamp witch aesthetics, which could be leading into voodoo not hoodoo, it could be leading into voodoo, or it could be leading into some other mythic shaman-esque thing, that's not culturally impactful in order to avoid any, offensiveness toward other people. But instead of trying to stick with that theme, they just threw cannibalism in there for legitimately no reason. There's nothing to explain where the cannibalism comes from. Not even in her original lore bit. Being kidnapped by cannibals and them attempting to eat you does not turn you into a cannibal. It's so bizarre and weird, and this isn't even in the script. I'm not even kidding you. I'm going off script here because I'm just so fucking confused. The more I think about this character, the more I get so ungodly pissed off because they were so close to having a perfect thematic design, one that would mirror something like The Nurse, where everything just falls neatly into place and paints a perfect little picture. And then for some goddamn reason, they just shoehorned this cannibal angle into her, and it feels so bad. Look, I've been told that the Hag is supposed to be this game's version of the Wendigo, and no, she isn't. Much like Trapper's spikes being the entity forcing him into submission or Huntress having the mind of a child, this Wendigo connection is yet another thing the community has gaslit themselves into believing is an actual part of the lore. There is nothing outside of the random cannibalism that is even remotely relatable to a Wendigo. Like I said, she's much closer to a swamp witch, somebody who practices dark magic, not a cannibalistic spirit. One of my chatters told me that she has an endless hunger, and when I asked him to provide the source for this, he couldn't find it, because it doesn't exist. If somebody has that, sure, I'd love to have it. I actually love to have it. I would love to have something stating that she has some sort of endless hunger for human flesh. Because in the lore, it states she has an endless hunger for revenge, for vengeance, not human flesh. You can't just take a cannibal and be like, oh, but that's a Wendigo, because cannibalism does not a Wendigo make. And if you want to learn more, I did an entire video on my other channel, Kaiser DeBard, back when I was in my little folklore video essay phase on the Wendigo. You can go check that out if you want. I'll leave it linked in the description. But there is nothing about the hag that even relates to her being a fucking Wendigo. Overall, the hag is a very confused killer thematically, and I honestly can't tell you which way they want to go with it. If I were Behavior, I'd go back in and rewrite everything, pick the Swamp Witch theme, and stick with it. Get rid of the cannibalism story and the psycho childhood Looney Tune death, and go from there. Thematically, I'll give Behavior a 2 out of 5, if only because I can see some semblance of what they were going for. I can see the vision that was happening in the room. It's, you know what it kind of reminds me of? This is what I picture. I picture a bunch of writers, and they're like, okay, so we're gonna have this Swamp Witch, and she's gonna have like a very kind of disfigured hand that she uses to draw her magic symbols and everything, and it's gonna be really cool. And then some guy named Derek came kicking in the fucking door and was like, I want cannibalism, and then he just fucking slapped a post-it note that's like 3 by 3 onto the fucking board, and everybody's too scared to tell Derek no because they're scared he's gonna headbutt him or sleep with their wife or whatever. So we're just like, yeah, Derek, we'll put cannibalism in there, sure. And Derek went, yeah, we got cannibalism, and then he fucking shotgunned another beer and ran out shirtless, and everybody was too embarrassed to ask HR to get rid of him. No, I don't know what I'm talking about. Actually, you know what? I'm not done. No, I'm not done. No. See, consider this a bonus rant in the section, if you will, because the more I sit here and I think about the hag's lore and themes, the more it fucking pisses me the hell off. I already wrote the script, right? And this is obviously off script. This is a completely unkempered, unfeathered, unhinged part. Consider this a rants by daylight, if you will. The hag's lore and themes is so fucking irritating because it's not just badly written, right? It's not just badly written, badly disjointed, unrealistic, completely unimmersive crap and slog, right? It is also something that was so close to perfection. The original vision they had for the hag, right? The original thing that they had was so close to being something truly interesting. And then for whatever reason, they just had to tack 2 things on. The random ass cannibalism that she has for literally no lore reason, and the fucking weird ass rural town psycho girl drawings, don't fuck with powers beyond your comprehension. Like, both of these things do not fit into the original aesthetics of the hag. There's 3 different characters that exist within this. A small town rural girl who messed with powers beyond her comprehension. A cannibal woman who is absolutely fucking insane. And a swamp witch who uses magic spells of her ancestors to commit heinous acts. And for these 3 things cannot coexist in the same realm. I could almost see the cannibalism working with the swamp witch aesthetic, right? I could almost see a group of cannibals led by an old wise woman who was taught by her grandmother to use human flesh and pieces as not only food, but for spells. I can see that vision, but the 2 are not mixed in together like they should be. They're slammed into each other like a kid trying to make Barbie doll and Ken kiss. You know, when they're like, oh my god, Ken, I love you so much. Oh, I love you, Barbie. Right? And they're like smacking them together. Like, that's how these 2 themes are put together in this game. It's like, cannibalism is really cool and I think it's really evil. And then it's like, but we have a swamp witch aesthetic. And then they start smacking them together. And it's just so fucking frustrating. Like, I went back too. I went back after recording the last 2 sections. I went back and I reread it and I was like, maybe I'm missing something, right? Because there's no goddamn way a team of professional writers and professional game developers fucked something up this goddamn bad. I am sorry. I try to be as reasonable as possible. I try to be as I try to reach out my hand and be like, look, I understand. You know, it was years ago. You guys were still a newer company, but come the fuck on. You can't fucking tell me. You can't tell me that this is even remotely. When did Tome 4 come out? This shit came out in 2020. 4 years after this game had already fucking been out. This isn't even about how back in the day they did things differently because they didn't expect the game to blow up. This was 4 years after the game came out. The Hag was like, what, the third chapter, the fourth chapter? It wasn't very far along. You're telling me 4 years after this game came out, you guys could not get a team of competent writers to come up with a Swamp Witch story, or even a story that matched the original fucking one. You couldn't come up with this little girl who grew up around magic, and maybe there was some conflict between her mother and her grandmother about whether or not she should learn magic before she got kidnapped and disappeared from the village that she was supposed to be a part of instead of a rural fucking town. I can't get over this. I can't get over how disjointed the original paragraph and the tome lore are from each other. This is worse than Wraiths. This is worse than some young Nigerian boy growing up in like terrible, horrible, war-torn era and then somehow making it all the fucking way to America to be a scrapyard worker. Like, this is worse disconnection than that, because both of these stories seemingly take place within a very short time frame. Like with the Wraith, you could at least be like, okay, the Wraith grew up and then he fucking like head out on a boat and made it to America illegally and all this, right? You could probably get away with that. But the way that these things are written is that the Hag got taken when she was a little girl. Not little girl, but you know what I mean, right? She got taken around the same time period because that's how these things are written. And it's like the tome writers didn't even fucking read the original lore. That's what pisses me off, right? It's like they were like, hey, we need you to write a tome for the Hag. And they were like, okay, what does she do? And like, well, read the lore. But yeah, but like, what does she do? And they're like, oh, I don't know. She draws symbols on the ground and teleports. And they were like, okay, that's all we need. It's like, no, that's not all you need. You need the previous context so you could provide more to the fucking story. Okay. I think I'm ready to record the power and gameplay section now. Whew. Okay. All right. I'm good. I have gone on record as stating that the Hag is one of the most fun killers to play, and it's because of something I stated way back in my Trapper video. I like the idea of a character whose identity is setting up a web of traps to corral survivors into and strategically shutting down the area, and the Hag does that wonderfully. The Hag's power is the blackened catalyst. Hold right click to draw a triangle on the ground. These triangles, when stepped over by a standing or running survivor, will trigger a phantasm clone. Snapping the survivor's camera to the clone, it gives off a fake tear radius of 8 meters and lasts for 6 seconds. Within that time, if the Hag was within 48 meters of the trap, she can teleport instantly and swing almost immediately. Survivors can avoid traps by either crouching or entering a 4-second wipe animation. The Hag can have a max of 10 traps on the field, and when she places down the 11th one, the oldest trap gets replaced. It's a very straightforward power with simple counterplay and various usage. Like I said, her main power is area control. Hag is honestly one of the best camping killers in the game. She excels at locking off sections to be her playground, and because she doesn't have to go on a fucking soul-searching hike in the Himalayas to get her fucking power, Trapper, she's a straightforward and fun killer that has a variety of builds and playstyles, with her base one being incredibly fun. You can play Hag in a various amount of ways, most of it being objective control, but you can also swap out a few add-ons here and there to make her potential chase killer. Some builds could also turn her into a really good hit and run killer, and that leads us into the perk recommendations. For the recommended perks, I get to actually recommend most hex perks for once. The Hag excels at defending objectives really better than almost any other killer in the game. Place your traps on hooks, gens, and hexes, and you'll be able to quickly return to defend them anytime the track is triggered. The track is trippered? The trap is triggered. especially with the new 48-meter range. Perks that strengthen your M1 are always goods, and perks that allow you to take advantage of the distance are especially great. Perks like Make Your Choice or Dragon's Grip normally don't do anything for most killers, as the time to trek back to the unhook or touch Jin is too much wasted, but the Hag can take extra advantage of these things. Avoid aura reading perks or perks that cause you to have to kick Jins and waste time. You are not a chase or anti-loop killer, and your slow 110% movement speed means you don't have time to be kicking Jins. As a final note, because you are an M1 killer in chase, make sure to take full advantage of perks like Mindbreaker and Languid Touch for anti-exhaustion. As far as skill ceiling and skill floor goes, I'd say that the Hag has somewhere between a low and medium skill floor. She's very similar to Trapper in that the most of her skill expression is going to be map knowledge over anything else. While the Hag is not incredibly perk or add-on reliant, she is very slightly. Her skill ceiling is not very high, unfortunately. While you can gain a lot of value from her traps and the way that they are laid out, there is nothing that you can truly excel at. Once you understand a lot of map design and understand how to lock down areas like 3 gens, then there's nothing more that can really be gained from that. Finally, what's it like playing against the Hag? Honestly, it's kind of fun. There's a lot of mind game and push and pulling involved that allows for some fun chases from time to time. The fact that you have to pay attention to the ground like you got a brain and shit automatically makes me like playing against her more, as anything that breaks me away from the pre-run hold W pre-drop cycle of most chases is an A in my book. Overall, for power and gameplay, I give Behavior a 4.9 out of 5, my only gripe being that you should have infinite range on your traps as a base kit, but realistically, she's a well-designed and well-balanced killer with an interactive power on both sides, and if you think that she's not, I don't know man, get good or something. Need more Kaiser in your life? Well, I've got you covered. Check out my second channel, The Kaiser Extras, where I upload full gameplays, stream compilations, me reacting to your Dead by Daylight clips, and more. We also upload a daily short with all the greatest clips from stream. We'll see you over there. Link is in the description. The Hag's perks are some of the most solid perks in the game. Hag introduced the Hex mechanic. Now, my relationship with Hex perks is rocky, and I do have a video coming out dedicated solely to them, but until then, just know that the flavor of Hex perks is that they are powerful, but countered by being cleansed from the map. This would be a great balance if it weren't for the fact that while playing as the killer, the survivors will spawn with your hexes buried up their asses and are cleansed immediately. And if you play as survivor, the hexes spawn outside of the bounds of the map and therefore can never be found or cleansed. That being said, for being a Hex perks, all of Hag's perks are fairly strong, so let's go through them real quick. Hex Devour Hope. I'd say out of all the perks in Dead by Daylight, this may be the most balanced perk in the game outside of Adrenaline pre-nerf. Yeah, that's right, I said it, eat my ass, pussies. I think Adren healing off hook was fine, especially since in order to even get in that situation, the survivor had to not only survive to the end of the game, but also not be on death hook, be on the hook when the last gen pops, and get rescued. I don't care if your fifis got hurt and it was annoying to deal with in the rare instances it happened, it was perfectly fine. Anyway, Devour Hope goes like this. When a survivor is rescued from a hook more than 24 meters away from you, gain a token. At 2 tokens, you gain a small haste effect 10 seconds after hooking a survivor. At 3, every survivor is exposed, and at 5, survivors are able to be moried from any hook state. Between a powerful effect that is earned and the fact that survivors can get rid of it, this is just an all-around solid perk through and through. Ruin is a perk that automatically begins regressing a gen when it isn't being repaired. It's a strong perk, but I feel like the regression rate could be 0.50 or even 0.75 charges a second instead of the 0.25 that it currently is, and it'd still be fine. And finally, third seal. Smack a bitch to make them blind. After all 4 bitches have been smacked, they are all blind until the totem is cleansed. A very solid perk. Blindness isn't the most useful or amazing status effect in the world, but it can be useful for delaying or even slowing hook saves, and for that, it works about as well as you could expect. Overall, I give Behavior a 4.9 out of 5 for this perk design. Just buff Ruin a tiny bit and it should be fine. They're very solid perks, balanced in every way that they possibly can be, and I think that despite the fact that they're Hex perks, some of them are still worth running in more cases than you might think. Hag's add-ons are surprisingly mostly good. Unfortunately, a lot of creativity is missing here. It's very similar to Rate's add-ons, where it's a bunch of raw number buffs with some interesting things here and there thrown together like a unique deafened effect that only happens one place in the game and nowhere else. I know what the wiki says for knockout, but guys, it does not cause the deafened status effect. Read it in the game, test it in your customs. I don't know why the wiki lies to you, but it does. Anyway, the raw number increases are pretty good across the board. Some add-ons like both Eries are really good, but your best bet will always be the double range add-ons for maximum defensiveness. The reason Mint Rag isn't an S even though its range is infinite is because triggering of the traps is what helps with defending things, because you won't know that the survivor is there until they trigger the trap. Waterlog Shoe is amazing because even though it turns you into a pure M1 killer, your traps now act as perma-clown bottles, slowing survivors down while giving you insane speeds. Like I said, a lack of creativity on display, but pretty solid perk design, so I'll give Behavior a 3 out of 5, if only for the lack of creativity. Outside of that, I think that you really can't go wrong with most of the add-ons that you run. Some of them are not that great, but even the ones that are not that great still aren't D or F, which is better than pretty much any add-on spread we've seen up until this point. At the end of the day, the Hag gets a 2.96 out of 5 for overall design. While she has amazing gameplay and perk elements, her add-ons lack some creativity, and her lore and thematics are nothing short of lazy, confused, and just absolutely terrible. After doing this video, I can honestly see why she isn't talked about much. She's kind of just a solidly designed killer with not a lot to discuss. This script was hard for me to write, as evident by the fact that I went off script a couple of times. There's not a lot to discuss here, and because I had trouble coming up with a lot to say about her, I wish there was more that I could feed you, more I could speak on, but honestly, she's just simply good gameplay-wise and bad lore-wise, and I think that's where I'll leave it. But as always, I don't just make these videos to spout my opinions at you, I want to know what you think, so let me know down below. And as always, a great big special thank you to my channel members listed on screen now. If you want to find out how to become a channel member today, get awesome perks like seeing videos early, merch discount codes, and more, then please click that join button down below. I love you guys so much, and I will see you in the next one.